Welcome everybody to the Jake Feinberg Show, broadcasting here live from Henderson, Nevada with a cat who has been opening my mind already. We're going to do a lot more. Clarence McDonald, Dr. Clarence McDonald, welcome to the Jake Feinberg Show, man.
Thank you so much. Thanks for coming back. It's fun hanging out with you.
And it's cooking outside. We're having a ball in here. Can you talk about a little bit about when you were younger, the idea of when you first connected with Charles Lloyd?
Actually, yes. And the reason I'm smiling about that is I just got a letter this past week that I'm getting inducted into the Dorsey High School Hall of Fame. And that's on September the 23rd at Dorsey High School.
Oh, that's beautiful. So explain, because listen, Lloyd is from Memphis, so explain the connection to Dorsey.
Charles Lloyd was teaching at USC and doing his student teaching at Dorsey High School. How's that for a good stroke of luck? So as it turned out, I started working with him in the Chico Hamilton band, and that was in 1961. And we'd go and play up in Haight-Ashbury on Saturday night or Sunday night, and we'd have to get in the car and drive straight back because I had to be in class at 7:30 in the morning. So, I look back and I say my life has been magical. Charles Lloyd for me was the unsung genius, and Chico Hamilton, who was just a multi-talented individual and drummer. And he had an advertising company in New York, so it's not like he was just out playing drums, being a jazz guy. He was a good businessman and just an excellent human being.
Clarence, this is important because we just watched a video on the satanic nature of music today, and sort of could you talk a little bit? Was there anything? This is going to sound kind of naive, but what was the most nefarious thing going on in the music industry as related to African American classical music, maybe otherwise known as jazz? What did Chico and Charles have to deal with on the business side?
Well, and that really hasn't changed. On the business side, there was always an unspoken code that blacks were not to be paid. And both Chico, who had, like I said, had an ad agency in New York back when nobody else had it black, and Charles Lloyd, who moved to his own count, they both got past that. Lots of people got caught up in getting upset or mad about it instead of figuring out, if you ain't got a solution, don't worry about it.
So how did they not worry about it? I mean, they channeled it through their music?
I think if you carry yourself in a certain manner and your music warrants it, after a while people have to give you what they should have done without you having to prove it.
Can you relate that to your own career?
Oh yes. I mean, when I first got in, and I remember telling somebody when they said, we want you to work for scale, I said, well, let me give you the English translation. Working for scale is minimum wage. And if you're looking for the minimum, you shouldn't have called me.
I dig.
And I didn't even want to work with people who were working for scale because oil and water don't mix. You can't put a Volkswagen engine in a Ferrari and expect it to go. And the truth of it is, the guy says, well, how well do you play? And the simple answer was, how well do you pay?
People are loving this already. Keep the comments coming in. We're live here with Clarence McDonald, who, can we talk a little bit about O.C. Smith? First of all, Bruce Conti, I put this quiz question up a while back. It didn't generate a lot of buzz, but Bruce Conti was the guitar player in the Sunday morning band. Is that what it was called?
Yes, it was.
You talked about O.C. and the significance of, because, this is what Ndugu told me yesterday. I want you to extrapolate on this. So he is teaching at USC, where you have the elite coming there. They're paying full ride. They're well off. They have deep chops, right? They play with each other. And Ndugu says to me, he goes, what about the cats that have rubber bands around their saxophones? What about the drummers in church, the raw cats? There's a divide between the elite. They won't go down there, right? Can you talk a little bit about the intermeshing of the, I don't know, there were no jazz schools when you were coming up, quote unquote. It was the street, but that was revealing to me in the sense that that divide needs to be fixed in order, in my mind. You can't have that kind of elitist mentality when it relates to melodic improvisation. Can you talk about what the church meant and how it lent itself to beautiful spiritual music?
Well, you covered a few subjects, so I'm going to try to go through
Absolutely
and get all of them.
Do it.
Going back to what Ndugu said, money does not make music. And unfortunately, I've seen too much of that where parents with money send their kids to school and the child may not want to do music, but that's what they've been bound to do. Music is not supposed to be a task. It's supposed to be a joy. So you find lots of people who have great skill and great facility, but if you have nothing to say, you have no heart in it, then basically you're a craftsman. If you want to do music, you got a story and you got to have feeling. That's why it will come from many different places, and especially the church, because they're uneducated to some extent, uninitiated, but what you have there is feeling, because that's what determines what music is. There's a difference between sound and music, and it's how you make it feel. Everybody's got the same notes to work with. It's what you do with them that determines what music is.
You have pictures all around this room that were taken by Les McCann. When did you first connect with Les? I mean, what has he meant to you as far as an inspirational character? I mean, I had a chance to interview that cat, but there's pictures of Dizzy in here. There's Dizzy. There's Miles. All right, those were all taken by Les. Sarah Vaughan's in the corner. But I think he was a pioneer. Explain his meaning to you.
I met Les. He was going to school at LA City College. And he was kind of like the Pied Piper. Everybody loved Les because he played and he made you feel it. He never dazzled you with an augmented 11th, flat 13th. He just sat down and he played the truth. And everybody knows the truth when they hear it. I watched him. I remember going to the Bit and the Renaissance, all of the clubs up on Sunset Boulevard where you could hear jazz. And Les was one of my favorite people because every time he sat down to play and to sing, you knew you were getting his heart. You weren't just getting a pre-programmed performance. And even now, if you see him, though his health has been giving him some trouble, you'll still know that's Les McCann. And him and Eddie Harris together, that was almost unfair because those two together, that was smoking.
Donald Dean, the great drummer.
Yes.
There's just some thoughts that were running concurrently through my head. Yeah, the idea is, Ndugu told me way back in 2011, he said, I never wanted to be a starving genius. You were talking before about advocating from a business point of view, pay me what it's worth, don't pay me scale. Can you talk about some starving geniuses that told you, I don't want to be like that cat? Whether it could have been anybody, but they were living that jazz life because they were being ripped off.
I think sometimes people can get the wrong impression, or everybody can see the same picture and come up with a completely different idea. Well, you got to pay your dues. I'm not trying to pay, I'm trying to collect. So, I mean, for some people, if that's what they felt like they needed to do to be in that pantheon of whatever jazzdom was, so be it. For me, I love music for the sake of music, but, I'm also fond of money. Yeah. And it's like anyone who says money can't buy happiness, I figure they just don't know where to shop.
Unbelievable. Can you play a little bit of something with feel? I just think a lot of cats that are watching right now would just love to see you play a little bit. Who have you been? Who have you been a musical director for? Who, can you talk about an experience early in your career when you got a nod to be a musical director for somebody, and knew that you belonged at that point?
Oh, I think the funniest one, and I must have been maybe 17 or 18. There was a singer that I truly loved named Lloyd Alexandria. Someone said that she needed a piano player, and I went. They were up on Hollywood Boulevard, Sunset Boulevard. I don't remember what the club was, but I came in and I said, "Hello, I'm Clarence McDonald." She said, "Oh, that's nice. Where's your father?" I said, "He's at work." And I said, "No, I'm Clarence McDonald. I'm the piano player." And she was kind of like, "No, you're not." And finally, we got to playing a few songs. I think about 2 weeks later, I was a musical director. So, but that was the funniest one for me, because I don't know why people try to connect music with a look or age. If you listen, you know what you got. But she was sincere about it. It's like, okay, that's nice. Where's your father? It's like, I came here to play. And she was such a sweetheart. I worked with her for several years too, because that's the way it's supposed to work. It's not what you look like, it's what you sound like, and most of all, what you feel like.
Yeah, but that's how do you deal? What do you talk to cats about today to infuse them with that life when you know that it is about this? It is about the surface now. It is more about the bottom line before they even enter into a record deal. It's how much can this record make, as opposed to, well, Ham Paws or any of these cats, they were artists, and they had at the time they had a record label that would support touring and also let them make, or keep music, let him make his kind of music. So what is your advice today to those who are trying to follow their true nature? As we talked about before, Mother Nature.
Well, I always say, pay at least as much attention to your welfare as you do your music. Then it all becomes simple. The fact that you want to be an artist is a wonderful thing, but I don't know any artists that don't eat. So you might want to factor that into the equation, because I don't care how well you think you play, you could probably do it better if you ain't hungry.
But so can you unpack that a little bit more? What do you want them, what should they be doing?
I think everyone, and not just musicians, anybody, should take business classes and learn the fundamentals of business.
Did you do that?
Yes. You can't. Well, I mean, it's foolish to go into something and have no idea what's involved and expect that everything is going to work out. You can either make a plan or you can plan to fail. And you can make a plan and still fail. But if you do, somewhere along the line where it went wrong, and then you don't have to start from point zero. If you're going from 1 to 10, maybe you can start at 4 the second time. But if you have no plan, every time you start back at 0. Bad move.
Okay, so one of my favorite, I love the soundtrack to the Mac. Okay, and you were a arranger for that. The cats on there, were you, after a while when you were doing the arranging, would you call on like Ed Green's on that, and Oscar Brashear's on that? I mean, were there certain cats that were your go-to cats, or was it just because the studio was so thriving, you'd pull people in and say, "I need you to play this"? Could you talk, because that stuff just grooved so hard?
Well, I think the art of writing it's just like making a suit. You're not just going to make a suit and you don't know what size the body is. When you're writing something, you're keeping in mind what musicians you want that can enhance what it is you're doing. So yeah, when I was writing something, I was always thinking who would be the best person to fit what it is we were doing. So I don't see how you could do it any other way.
Could you point to an example from an album you did about like the feel you were trying to get, and then who you eventually brought in for it?
Oh, I can remember, and it was so amazing because everybody called them guitar players. David T. and Wah Wah are as different as day and night.
Explain to the audience, because I love them both, but break it down.
Oh.
Go ahead, from your point of view.
David T. Walker could give you that lighthearted feel. He just kind of sprinkle flowers on top of it. Wah Wah would come in and put the groove under it. And then there were two other guitar players that fell into that same position, which were Leo Nocentelli and Al McKay. Because
Earth, Wind, and Fire. Leo was a big Jake Feinberg show fan down in New Orleans, the Meters. So yeah, so you just factored in those four.
Oh yeah.
So David T, humorous, beautiful, lilting, gorgeous melodies. Wah Wah laying the funk and the rhythm, and then breakdown Nocentelli and McCabe.
Both of those had the New Orleans vibe. See, every area has a vibe, and most people who don't understand music don't get it. Every area with the indigenous folks there, whatever happened there, worked them into a certain sort of feeling and groove. And Al McKay and Leo Nocentelli both brought that New Orleans, I got some funk for you groove. So David T brought the West Coast, watch this, you're gonna love this. And Wah Wah was the Detroit funkster. But like I said, another one before I forget, Dean Parks.
Dean, man, where are you coming on the Jake Feinberg show? Yeah, Dean, dude. I mean, the stuff on Steely Dan is just incredible, you know?
And you know what the joy is? To put all of them in a room together, and let me not forget Ray Parker, because he'd come up here and chase me.
Yeah, there's a bunch of cats we probably left out, but yeah, Park.
But to watch them in a room together and watch the interplay, the courtesy, the listening, the complimenting that they did with each other, that was the magic on a record. You hire people not to read the music, but to take the music you wrote and make it much better than what you brought there.
Just the off-air conversation we had, without getting into specifics, is totally blown my mind. So I'm a little bit just trying to get back on board here with this man. Beautiful cat, Dr. Clarence McDonald. A lot of people, is it an honorary doctorate or?
Yes.
It's okay. So how did you? Why were you honored? Where were you honored?
It was St. Stephen's College, and they said, we'd like to give you a doctorate, and I said, I'd like to have one.
but I mean, what was the merit? What was the lineage of you and this college? It was just the idea was in your hood. It was something that they knew who you were. Can you break that down?
Yeah. Oh, yes. They knew my work, and they came to me and said, we'd like to give you a doctorate, and I said, that was great, which goes back to what I was talking about in the beginning. After 55, 60 years, my high school is finally putting me in the Hall of Fame.
Yeah, congratulations. I think that's unbelievable. So you're getting a high school induction this year.
But you got to realize, it was a great high school. You know, Mike Love of the Beach Boys, Marilyn McCoo, Billy Preston. I mean, this was no slouch of a high school. I'm just glad they finally got to me.
I mean, that's pretty heavy stuff. I mean, I didn't even... Mike Love went to that high school?
Yes.
Keep the comments coming here live on Facebook here with Clarence McDonald and the Jake Feinberg Broadcasting Network, having a ball here. I think I might have asked you this before, but people's ears... Gary Bartz, big fan of my show, teaches at Oberlin College, and he talks about a lot of the students, their ears are locked. Okay, he says their ears are locked. Okay, and that can be for a variety of reasons. But I wanted you to talk about where your ears grew the most. In what experience did your ears grew the most? You talk about Watson, and you watch those guys in the room listening. Their ears they had elephant ears. All the cats that were in from your generation had huge ears. So where did your ears grow the most? In what context?
Okay, well, first of all, I'd like to say the reason everybody's ears grew the most is in those days you were there to compliment. Unfortunately, music has turned into Star Search or what's the voice, or whatever you call it, where now everybody's competing for acceptance. That's a hard way to get a musical mesh when everybody wants to be the guy on top. And I think it's reflected in the music. But getting big ears was easy. It was in the church. You started out there. Sister Johnson started singing Amaze. By the time she got to Maze, you better found her key and be playing the chord, or else she's looking back at you saying, what's wrong with him? So you learn to listen because that's the only way you can learn. And like I said, I think the thing that has happened is now most people are trying to do this for employment, which there's nothing wrong with it, but it's changed the essence of how the music was made.
Can we also talk about how music was, what it meant to our culture when you were coming up, as opposed to where it is? To me, the culture's been stifled to a degree, pushed off into gentrification, less clubs and venues, where before it was right out in your face. So music means something different now too.
Oh, I'll start with this, and I always say it. When there were neighborhood nightclubs, there was a chance for people to grow and learn, for people to walk by a door and hear something that caught their attention. Now that that's gone and it's all become corporate, and the fact that they remove music and sports from the school systems, that was courting a disaster, which has brought exactly what we have now.
Can you, the sports I'm not familiar with. I know they've stripped the music out, but sports as well?
They've underfunded the sports. Those were the two things that minorities had that they could excel in. And the fact that it was removed, I don't think was in any way accidental.
Could you talk to me and the worldwide audience? I mean, it's always been a business. It's always been an industry. But you say it's corporate. That's different. How is it different now than it was before? Because...
Oh, I can tell you.
Break it.
In the 60s, Elektra Records, I'm trying to think of all of the record companies, you signed an act. You groomed them. You helped them write songs. You got people to write songs for them. You invested money in them.
Right.
Now it's come in, bring me a hit, and hope I pay you. That's the difference. All of the companies, and I go back to Motown, people talk about Berry Gordy, but Berry Gordy groomed his acts so that by the time they came out to the public, they were ready to be seen in public. And it wasn't where if you don't get a hit on the first record, second or even third record, you can't. And what's lost now, and I go back to, I'm trying to think of the lady's name.
Was Smokey groomed?
Yes. Oh,
and that means that was, they were in the studios just relentlessly, or working locally too.
Yeah, I mean, it was like a workshop. It was an ongoing workshop. Guys were getting together, Holland Dozier, Holland, Smokey, everybody. They're writing songs together. They're working, they're creating every day. Now you got kids go to school, they learn music, and I went over to Musicians Institute, and I remember asking, how many of you guys play together after school? None of them. It's like, if you're not playing together, how do you expect to create? It's not going to just run up on you. Your mistakes are what teaches you what works. And I was shocked to find out the kids come to school, they play, they do their homework, they go home. We always had a place to play. Guys would call, hey man, we're getting together, we're going to do a jam session. And those jam sessions is what turned it into jelly, because you got to make something out of it. If you're not playing with folks and just staying in your room on a computer, you're missing a lot of what you should be seeing.
Now, could you talk, to put it into this time, with lack of venues, did you just make up your own venues? What I'm getting at is that you were with Lloyd and Chico, among many other people. Ndugu was on the road with Alice Coltrane, so the apprenticeship was on the bandstand. I realize now, after doing the show for 6 years, I'm just trying to open a portal to you guys, because it's a travesty to me that you can't teach on the bandstand. These younger cats, you'd be the same, I mean, not necessarily sitting in your room, but you know what I'm getting at? You don't have that ability right now.
Yeah, well, it's not set up to be creative anymore. That's the major problem. And they're wondering, well, what went wrong? Well, you squeezed all of the juice out of the berry. What did you expect?
Right, you're not getting any jelly on it. You're not getting any jelly.
Yeah.
What do you got?
If you don't jam, you can't get no jelly.
What is the silver lining? Do you see younger cats that are searching? I mean, I want, listen, you are a vibrant person with deep intuition and deep knowledge. I mean, deep, and I can attest to this. So where's the silver lining here? Because my show is about inspiration.
I'll tell you, right at this point, I met a young man, well, a couple of young men. One is Christian Rivera. The other one is Robert G. Johnson. G stands for gifted.
Yeah.
And I'm seeing what they like. And Robert is a singer-writer. And he sent me some material, and he's the future. There's always a future. You just may have to go searching for it. And
what's he doing that indicates progressive?
oh, he sent me songs. He's a singer, a
Yep.
natural entertainer, came out of the church, and I'm going to start working with him because we need another Michael Jackson. We need another Prince. And that's what's got to show up. That's what's missing.
Well, I'd say okay, so let's go farther here. I went to see Benny Maupin play the other night. He gets up in front of this crowd, starts talking about Kamasi Washington, who's this, horn player, okay? But like Obama can't do it alone. Kamasi Washington can't do it alone. These two cats that you're talking about, I mean, I think we need more about 40 of those cats, right? It was a collective movement.
Right.
And so, I mean, how do you get the offspring,
Let me say it like this. It's the same way that happened to us. The music will draw the creative people. That's the way it was always done. You heard a sound and you wanted to be there. And then the next thing you knew, you were a part of that sound. And it'll happen again because that's the universal nature. Once that sound gets out that has the creative feeling, the creative people will gravitate to the sound, and you'll have another Motown, you'll have another Warner Brothers, you'll have another RCA. So it happens, and it's always cycles. We went through a great cycle in the 60s, 70s, and part of the 80s. And now it's time for that cycle to return. I'm just happy that I'm around long enough to see its return and that I can work on helping it return.
Tell me a little bit specifically about how you want to help these cats. I think it's make them more polished, make them understand the business side of it. Because Bill Summers, you're a one-man band now, and you got to do everything. So what is it? What are specifically the talents that you are going to bring to these cats?
It's called knowledge and experience.
Yeah, I got you dropped knowledge on me before this interview. so knowledge and experience, right?
And I always tell folks, if you have no history, you have no future. And that's what you have to do is give them, okay, here's the history of where this came from, how it got to where it was. Now they have a platform from which they can spring. And that's what I'm here to do.
Wow. Clarence McDonald having a ball here, man. Yeah, so we talked before, we were talking about Calvin Keys, but you said you haven't seen Calvin since the 60s.
Yes.
In what context did you see him in?
Oh, we used to play together.
Okay, so you would go up to the Bay Area and play with him?
Oh, no, when he was in L.A. and in the Bay Area. But no, Calvin was just always a sweetheart of a guy. My roommate was a drummer, Michael Carvin.
Oh, Michael! My God, that's heavy stuff. I did interview Michael this year.
Oh, we were roommates.
Yeah, where were you living in L.A.?
In L.A.
Yeah.
On Fifth Avenue, right off of Jefferson.
Wow. So Calvin would come over and or you guys would play Larry Gale's Coffee House or something like that?
We would play wherever it happened, but I didn't realize how many years it's been since I've seen him. But he's one of my favorite people.
Calvin, if you're going to watch this interview, I just want you to know that you need to reach out to Clarence McDonald, man, because you guys
give him my number and give me his.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll connect it, man. Can you talk about the workshops that were going on at that time? You and Carvin, the spontaneous stuff. I mean, I think that a lot of people can get sucked into the saturation of material via the internet, via computers. But can you talk about some of the organic creation that you guys, because you were just together and you had the venues to play at? I mean, could you point to a time where you were? It was basically a total lab experiment.
Yeah, I call it the post-cell phone era. Yeah.
The pre-cell phone era.
Yeah. Yeah, because that was, people had to get together. That's what you did. Now everybody's singular, and it shows. So, yeah. Before, and it wasn't even so much the computer as it was the cell phone, where people just started to isolate themselves and became reasonably unsocialized. and it'll pass. It's like anything else. You find out you got to get back to the energy that can only be generated by diverse human beings. That's the energy that made the music.
So you were steeped in the upbringing of OC's church. When you rejoined the church, can you talk about how it impacted your soul and how it impacted just how it impacted you as a human being?
I'll say this for me because I grew up in the church and I grew away from the church, and purely by accident, Tony Lewis, who was the drummer at the church, asked me to come and play because the piano player
Smokey's drummer, right?
Yes. Still with Smokey, by the way.
Tony Lewis, man.
Yeah.
Wow.
And asked me to come and play for a couple of weeks, and that ended up being 8 years. And the thing that's so funny, it's up on my refrigerator, just found it. It was a check that OC had given me for like $425. I never cashed it. I put it down somewhere. But it also reminded me of what was important at the church. It wasn't about the money, it was about the music. And I say this because I admired OC as an entertainer and even more so as a pastor, because he lived the kind of life that I thought most pastors should.
How did he live it?
He helped his flock.
Can you give an example?
My brother had a heart attack. He flew to Las Vegas, found a chelation place for him and a doctor, got back on the plane, flew back home, same day. That's what I'm talking. He literally worked himself to death, but he was doing what he loved. So,
can you talk to pastors, not that you're preaching to anybody, but the idea that they think they might be doing that kind of work, but they're not? What should they be trying to tap into inside themselves? Because away from the grid, because the church has become pretty corporate too.
Yes, it is. That's unfortunate. And I always say it like this: you can't tell somebody what to do. They've got to feel it, and that's the measure of what determines how well they are. You can't preach to a preacher, and you can't preach to a sinner. Everybody makes their own decisions, and at some point, you come around.
Can you play a little gospel right now?
I've read about the gospel stuff. I mean, it just
yeah. Well, whatever you can do. I'm feeling real. I need some soul, deep soul. With Clarence McDonald right now, live on Facebook here. I'm lucky to be here, baby. Okay, so but this is important. We people that are touring now, that have careers, that are able to make it in music. Life on the road has changed. Nicer hotels. You have a tendency to get the right equipment, or your equipment, maybe. Okay, and I want you to talk about the Dog du jour piano. If there was a time when you walked in, and there's stories about McCoy Tyner having to bang the piano back into key. Joe Sample never knew what kind of piano he was dealing with. Do you remember walking in, and can you talk about one of the apparatuses you had to deal with, and if you had to play it back into tune?
Oh, there were lots of times where there weren't very good instruments. And the thing I finally realized is bring an instrument. I mean, that's what started me doing it. I actually ended up, I think I had 4 Fender Rhodes and 4 clavinets because I was recording all the time. And I didn't have time to move stuff from one studio to the next.
I'm talking more in the live context, when you would go
Yeah.
up to San Francisco and there was no guarantee of anything, where you just had to just wing it.
Oh yeah, I mean, but that's part of the game. There are no guarantees in life, so you go there and you hope, please, let it work. Oh, they had some pianos where there were more notes not working than working. So you had to find the ones that were working and use them to the best of your ability.
What is your definition Lloyd and Charles and I had a great conversation a few years ago, and when he was at USC and also teaching at your high school, he talked about absolutely no recognition paid to Duke Ellington or any of the black masters of the music, all right? And I wonder what you feel about the word jazz, and whether, because you are kind of more from the Duke school of music. I mean, clearly your studio career plays that out, but it's all music. And has the stratification of jazz, or whatever, people don't know what that means anymore, has it hurt the ability for it to be a popular music again?
Well, I always tell people, they say, well, man, I heard you're a great jazz pianist. And say, well, I don't know how. I was fortunate enough to work with some great jazz players, but like I say, Carole King isn't a jazz singer. James Taylor's not a jazz singer. Like I said, I always thought, as Miss Hightower taught us, you're a musician. You're not a jazz musician or a rock musician. You're just a musician. So the labels are good for people that want them, but I don't have any use for them.
Can you talk to peeps that are going to see this either live or in the future, and they are caught up in the high tower of academia? Okay, that's where the music is being, vocabulary is trying to be created within academia, and they want to stretch. Where if they're at USC, or they are, where are they gonna where do they need to go to find the other kinds? They're a musician, and they want to find that music. So where are some of the places they go? I mean, is it the YMCA? Is it the church? Where are they going? Where do they need to go? Push themselves out to go find other types of music, because they're in a jazz program at a university, paying thousands of dollars.
And I went there a few times, and I even said it when I went there. It is truly unfortunate that there are not a lots of places where people can go to expand. Church was always a good one, but there are no clubs. I wish I knew the answer to that question, but I don't.
Well, okay, that's fine. And that because there are no right or, we're always searching. But did you know Horace Tapscott? Did you know? Okay, can you, they had these associations. Do those even exist anymore? I mean, was that sort of the creative outlet that you were, not necessarily Horace, but there are not outlets for cats to go and experiment as musicians, because you get pegged into, oh, you're a jazz musician, so therefore you're playing a jazz club, but all of a sudden it's like you lose the concept of you're a musician. I mean,
Well, there used to be music schools. There on 3rd Avenue in Venice, there was a music school. I can't remember the name of it. But there were places where people brought their kids. They learned music. They played with other kids. I don't see it anymore. Part of it for me is age, because I don't go out that much anymore. Don't tell everybody.
You're honest.
But I mean, I wish I knew where to direct the youngsters to where they could just get caught up in diversity and grow. And I'm going to start looking for it, because that's going to help.
So many things are going through my mind right now. What do you mean diversity? How does that maybe seem common sense to you, but how do you find it if you get there?
I want to see a string player meet a violin player. I want to see a drummer meet another percussionist, to find out, don't get caught up in just what you do. Like I said, in everything, why can't it be classical? Why can't it be pop? Why can't it be rock and roll? Because you limited yourself. So just let go of your inhibitions, get out there and go learn. Everything is out there. Now that's the good part about the internet. Everything that is going on that was on film is on there. So if you want to find out what was happening back in the day, go look at it. And then
Can you feel it though, as compared to a live setting?
No, oh no, there's nothing like live. Everything that ain't live is dead.
Okay, this is really important because in our second radio interview, you kind of blew my mind because you said all of a sudden you and Herb Albert were noticing that these efficiency experts or this efficiency model was coming into the. Can you talk about for the audience, education wise, the ability, the freedom that might have existed before, and then when the efficiency model came in, what the intention was and how it warped the music?
Well, I always go back to my famous statement: why feed cheese to the goose that's laying the golden egg? If something is working, and it is, it's going to be loose. And when you try to quantify it to a point, you take away the creativity. And that's basically what happens in every situation. You look at every company, it works, it gets big by freewheeling and operating intuitively. Then somebody decides to quantify it. No, we need to do it like this every time. There's no do it like this every time, because every time is different. So that's always the key. It's like snatching defeat out of the jaws of victory. Come on, we can find a way. What they say, if it ain't broke, keep fixing it until it is.
Yeah, right. But I mean, so before it was, would you say in the studio model, it was different every time?
Yes. And that's
how liberating was that? I mean, how much did you grow? How much did your intuition grow? How much did you grow because of that?
You learned as much in every session as the people you were working for, because that was the fun of it. You had stuff happen that had never happened to you before, and people sang stuff and played stuff that had never come to their minds before. That's the creativity that made the magic. And I always tell folks, when you get to the point where you know what you're going to play next, don't do it.
Don't do it.
Yeah.
But then, okay, but then when the efficiency model came in, all of a sudden there were more demands on people to say, no, we don't have time for that. We don't have time for that spontaneity. I mean, I'm trying to get an idea of what was cut out so that it stopped breathing.
The fun was replaced by funds.
Fun replaced by funds, people. All right?
Yeah.
Dig that.
Yeah, when the main idea became to work as efficiently as possible and save as much money as possible, that's what you got. You got music that was safe and within the budget. Oh boy.
It is, you do have to sing for your supper, and you did mention before about you have no problem with money. And but has the greed factor gotten? Have you ever seen it as high as it is today?
No, but I think that's what's been fed to people, that your idea of success is how much money you get. Used to be the idea of success was how you affected people. So it's just that the goal is, they moved the goalpost. It used to be, let's see what we can get out of our heart to make you feel something. Now it's, can I get one more Mercedes?
Yeah, we just saw that satanic video, that a lot of toys and Happy Meal stuff, but they got you. I just moved the camera into the visual range of Ray Charles. Can you talk about Ray and your work, your collaboration with Mr. Charles?
He was my mentor, friend, and probably, they throw the word genius out regularly. He was that.
What's your definition of a genius? Why was he a genius?
Because he could make you feel what it was he was trying to convey. He also had the craftsmanship and the skill to give you the exact notes to play and let you know when you hadn't played them the way they should feel.
He did this in a nonverbal way?
Oh, he was very verbal. No doubt about it.
I know he lacked his primary sense, which was vision. But I mean, you're talking about feel. So I mean, if you weren't playing in the right key, he would help you play. He would help you feel it.
Oh no, he would just say like, third trumpet, that's an F sharp, 47, and he knew. But it wasn't that, and he was really rough on drummers, because it's kind of like that, I'm going to be perfect and I'm going to be correct. That was the quickest way to get in trouble with Ray. Ray would set a tempo that you could go out to lunch between 1 and 2, 2 and 3, and 3 and 4. But it was always exactly where it was supposed to be. The guys who were tight and trying to play it right didn't work out very well with Ray, because he could sing Georgia slow enough, but I promise you the time was impeccable. All you had to do was follow the leader.
Who do you think was the best drummer that you played with Ray? Like, who was able to slow the tempo down when he put Georgia in the slowest tempo?
I'm looking at his.
Was Earl Palmer at all involved? I know he was the studio man, but I mean,
yeah, but no,
Paul Humphrey.
No, both of those. No, I know the drummer.
We're having an issue. Clarence has been recognizing people by face, but unfortunately the name. We're just having that. But I mean, so drummers.
Wilbert Hogan.
So that's not on my radar. But Wilbert was able to modulate based on what Ray's tempo was.
It was like they were married. Ray started to say, as soon as the pocket was, he'd just find the pocket and put the rest of the band in it. Wilbert Hogan. I'm getting old. I can't remember names. I got faces covered, but the names escape me now.
You can still play a little bit as we wrap up set 1 here. Do you want to play a little blues before as we wrap?
Okay.
One question for you before we wrap. Beautiful. Why should cats trust their intuition more than anything else in the world?
Because that's what the universe gave you. If you can't trust yourself, who do you think you should trust?
How did you learn to trust yourself?
By making the mistakes, by not doing it. You remember, experience is what you get right after you needed it.
Yeah, Clarence McDonald, we'll be back in a little bit. We're going to grab a bite to eat with set 2. Love always to everybody out there. We'll see you all later. Thank you, Clarence.
Thank you much, Jake.